Christmas is by its nature an act of imagination. To take its legends and its poetry literally is to misunderstand it and to miss its magic. The human spirit is not meant to dwell only in the corridors of prose. How dismal is the life, confined to literal history and pragmatic fact, with no hint of make-believe or mystery.
Christmas takes its place in the panoply of Yuletide, with its own special vision of light and hope in the darkness of the year. Its stories are absurd, impossible, an outrageous collection of special effects, dazzling us with stars and angels and kings on camels, and the eternal promise of peace on earth, goodwill to everyone, not just to the righteous or the victors or the skilled or the important, but to everyone. Isn't that right there an act of imagination? Why not a baby in a manger and all the rest of it? Or a jolly old toy maker from the North Pole with a white beard and a sleigh full of presents?
Christmas invites us to imagine a world of kinship and compassion in which every child, no matter how humble, can grow up to change the course of history. What a sad old globe this would be without that dream to warm our hearts with hope, just as winter settles in hard.
Christmas is an act of not just personal, but collective imagination. We come together to remember the stories, to pass the legends and the dreams and the poetry and the magic down the generations, so that they may make glad the hearts of our children and our children's children. It is easier to imagine Christmas by firelight, with familiar songs on our lips and the candles in our hands, with snowflakes in the air and the longest night just past. Reason is still and always our friend, but so too is Christmas, an act of imagination and faith, an enchanted taste of the world that is in our power to build, when we are touched by the beauty of the dreams we share.
Welcome then to the magic of Christmas. May the ancient stories do their healing work amidst our brokenheartedness and cynicism. May the chalice we share tonight be added to every other candle that betokens the festival of lights, and from them all, may our world be illuminated in kinship and peace. And let's rise and sing, and then we'll light our chalice. the spirit of Christmas, we invite a child to kindle this new light and together lift our hearts and raise it high. You can be seated.
Good evening. Good evening.
All right, I'll tell you what. Why don't you use this one? There you go.
Good evening. My name is Sierra, and I light this chalice for the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all.
That's beautiful. Yeah, just put that to this.
A Sunday afternoon it was, some days before Christmas, with rain, with wind, with cold, winter's gloom. The things to-do list was long and growing like unrestrained mold. Temper, short. Bioindex, negative. Horoscope, caution suggested. The Sunday papers, dollars, death, and destruction as the day's litany. Oh, the tidings of comfort and joy, fa-la-la. Then the holy hour of Lord's Day bliss was jarred by a pounding at the door. Now what? Opening it, resigned to accept whatever bad news lay in wait, I am nonplussed. A rather small person in a cheap Santa Claus mask carrying a brown paper bag out thrust. Trick or treat! The Santa mask shouts. What? Trick or treat! Santa's mask hoots again. Tongue-tied, I stare at the apparition. He shakes the bag at me, and dumbly I fish out my wallet to find $1 to drop in the bag. The mask lifts, and it is an Asian kid with a $10 grin taking up most of his face. Want to hear some caroling? He asks in accented English. I know him now. He belongs to a family settled into the neighborhood by the Quakers last year. Boat people, Vietnamese, I believe, refugees. He stopped by at Halloween with his sisters and brothers, and I filled their bags. Hong Duck is his name. He's maybe 8. At Halloween, he looked like a wise man in a bathrobe with a dish towel around his head. Want to hear some caroling? I nod, envisioning an octet of urchin refugees hiding in the bushes ready to join their leader in an uplifted song. Sure, where's the choir? I'm it, he says. And he launched forth with an up-tempo chorus of Jingle Bells at full lung power. This was followed by an equally enthusiastic rendering of what I swear sounded like Hark the Herry Angels Sing. And finally, a soft-voiced, reverential singing of Silent Night. Head back, eyes closed, from the bottom of his heart, he poured out into the gathering night the last strains. Sleep in heavenly peace. Wet-eyed, dumbstruck by his performance, I pulled a $5 bill out of my wallet and dropped that in the paper bag. In return, he produced half a candy cane from his pocket and passed it solemnly to me. Flashing that $10 grin, he turned and ran from the porch. God bless you! Trick or treat! And he was gone. Who was that masked kid? Hong Duck, the one-man choir, delivering Christmas door to door. I confess that I'm usually a little confused about Christmas. It never made a lot of sense to me. It's unreal. Ever since I got word about Santa Claus, I've been a closet cynic at heart. The appearance of a newborn king doesn't interest me. I'd just as soon settle for a new president. Babies and reindeer stink. I've been around them both, and I know. And the little town of Bethlehem is a pit, according to folks who have been there. Christmas isn't very real to me, and yet, I'm too old to believe in it and too young to give up on it, too cynical to get into it and too needy to stay out of it. Trick or treat. After I shut the door came near hysteria, laughter and tears, and that funny feeling you get when you know that once again Christmas has come to you. Right down the chimney of my midwinter hovel comes Saint Hong Duck. He's confused about the details, like me, but he is very clear about the spirit of the season. It's an excuse to let go and celebrate, to throw yourself into the holiday with all you have, wherever you are. I'm it, says he. Where's Christmas? I ask myself. I'm it, comes the echo. I'm it. Head back, eyes closed, voice raised in whatever song I can muster the courage to sing. God, it is said, once sent a child upon a starry night, that the world might know hope and joy. I am not sure that I quite believe that, or that I believe in all the baggage heaped upon that story over the last 2,000 years, but I am sure that I believe in Hong Duck, the one-man Christmas choir shouting, "Trick or treat," door to door. I don't know who or what sent him, but I know that I have been tricked through the whimsical mischief of fate into joining the choir that sings of joy and hope. Through a child, I have been treated to one more Christmas. Please rise.
You. They say that if you creep into an evergreen forest late at night, you can hear the trees talking. If you listen very carefully to the whisper of the wind, you will hear the older pines telling the youngest ones why they won't ever be perfect. They will always have a bent branch here, a gap there.
The old trees murmur the story of Small Pine, who once grew in a deep forest among the most beautiful evergreens of all. For here, the sun shone just right, not too hot, not too dim. Here the rain fell just enough to keep the ground moist and soft, so no tree went thirsty. And here the snow fell gently, day after day, to keep every branch fresh and green.
Each year as Christmas approached, happy families would search the forest for the most perfect, most beautiful tree. Those trees fortunate enough to be chosen would be carried home and beautifully decorated to preside in honor over all the Christmas celebrations. Out in the hushed forest, every evergreen hoped for this honor. Each tree tried to grow its branches and needles to perfection. All of them strained to have the best form and appearance.
One tree, Small Pine, grew near the edge of the forest and promised to be the most beautiful of all. As a seedling, it had listened carefully to the older trees who knew what was best for young saplings. And it had tried so very hard to grow just right. As a result, everything about Small Pine, from its deep sea green color to the curling tip of its evenly spaced branches, was perfect. It had, in fact, already overheard jealous whispers from the other trees, but it paid them no mind. Small Pine knew that if you do your very best, what anyone else said didn't matter.
Then, one cold night, when a bright, full moon gleamed on the snowy crust of snow, a little gray rabbit came hopping so fast as he could run, into the grove of evergreens. The rabbit's furry sides heaved in panic. From beyond the hill came the howling of wild dogs and the thrill of the hunt. The bunny, his eyes wide with fright, frantically searched for cover. But the dark, cold trees lifted their branches away from the snow and frowned. They did not like this interruption of their quiet evening when the growing was at its best. Faster and faster the little rabbit circled as the excited howling of the dogs sounded louder and louder.
And then Small Pine's heart felt pity. When the terrified rabbit ran near, Small Pine dipped its lower branches down to the snow. And in that instant, before the wild dogs broke into the grove, the little rabbit slipped under Small Pine's evergreen shield. He huddled safely among the comforting branches while the dogs galloped by and disappeared into the forest.
In the morning, the rabbit went home to his burrow, and Small Pine tried to lift its lower branches back up to their proper height. It strained and struggled long through the day, but the branches were frozen into the snow. Oh well, thought Small Pine, it might not matter. Perhaps the children wouldn't notice a few uneven branches near the ground in a tree that was otherwise perfect.
But several days later, a terrible blizzard lashed the land. No one remembered ever having so much wind and snow. Villagers closed their shutters tight, while birds and animals huddled in their nests and dens. A brown mother wren had become lost in the storm. With feathers so wet she could barely fly, she went from one large evergreen to another, looking for a shelter. But each tree she approached feared that the wren would ruin its perfect shape and clenched its branches tight like a fist.
Finally, the exhausted wren fluttered towards Small Pine. Once more, Small Pine's heart opened, and so did its branches. The mother wren nestled on a branch near the top, secure at last. But when the storm had ended and the bird had flown away, Small Pine could not move its top branches back to their perfect shape. Now there would always be a funny gap in them.
Days passed, and winter deepened. The packed snow had frozen so hard that only the strongest deer in the forest could dig through the snow to reach the tender ground moss, which they ate to survive.
One little fawn had wandered away from his mother. Now he was starving. He inched into the pine grove and noticed the soft, tender evergreen tips. He tried to nibble on them, but every tree quickly withdrew its needles so the tiny deer teeth couldn't chew them. Thin and weak, he staggered against Small Pine.
Once again, pity filled the tree's heart, and it stretched out its soft needles freely for the starving fawn to eat. But by the time the little deer was strong enough to scamper away, Small Pine's branches looked very ragged. Then Small Pine wilted in sorrow. It could hear what the larger, still perfect trees were saying about how bad it looked. A tear of pine gum oozed from the tip of a branch. Small Pine knew that now it could never hope for the honor of being chosen as a Christmas tree.
Lost in despair, Small Pine watched as laughing families passed it by, looking for a perfect tree. How could such an ugly tree with so many drooping branches even be allowed in the forest? But one little girl stopped and looked carefully at the forlorn little pine. She noticed the tracks of small animals under its uneven needles. She saw a wren's feather caught in its branches. And as she studied the gaping hole in its side and its ragged shape, understanding filled her heart. "This is the one," she said, and pointed to Small Pine.
Her father was surprised, but he helped her carefully cut Small Pine, and to the astonishment of all the evergreens in the forest, carry it from the forest to their home. There it was, decorated with shimmering silver stars and golden angels, which sparkled and flashed in the light of glowing candles. On Christmas Day, a Yule log blazed in the fireplace. While orange flames chuckled and crackled, the family and all their relatives and friends danced and sang together around Small Pine.
And everyone who danced and sang around Small Pine said that it was the finest Christmas tree ever. For in looking at its drooping, nibbled branches, they saw the protecting arm of their father or the comforting lap of their mother. And some, like the little girl, saw the love that is the meaning of Christmas.
So if you walk among evergreens today, you will find, along with rabbits, birds, and other happy living things, many trees like Small Pine. You will see a dropping limb, which gives cover, a gap offering a warm resting place, or branches ragged from feeding hungry animals. For the trees have learned, as have many of the wisest among us, that it is living for the sake of others that makes us most beautiful.
Let's stand and sing.
From angels bending near the
covenant community here at All Souls is called upon, not just in this season, but many times throughout the year, to provide assistance to our own members who are experiencing difficulties in their lives, or to offer various forms of tangible help to our neighbors who are homeless or in need. It can be humiliating to admit in front of everyone that you are struggling to make ends meet, living without water or electricity in your home, or have urgent medical needs that you cannot afford to address. The minister's discretionary fund exists so that I have the ability to give small amounts of help in these kinds of emergency situations while maintaining the confidentiality and dignity of those who ask. The fund is also used to help individuals and children participate in church programs without straining their financial stability, or to enrich programs that have insufficient resources allocated in the operating budget. All the fees that I receive for weddings and memorial services go into this fund, as well as yearly income from a minor bequest. Everything else in the fund comes from contributions to the Christmas Eve offering, such as this one tonight. As we acknowledge the many gifts of good fortune and blessing in each of our lives, I invite you to help make it possible for our congregation to respond with generous compassion to the silent needs that are also always present among us. In this spirit, our Christmas Eve offering in support of the minister's discretionary fund will now be gratefully received. Now I'm going to ask for some help from the children who are here. So would you please leave your candles for the moment with your parents or whoever you're sitting with, and come on up front and help me out for a minute.
The beginning of Christmas. So who knows something about the story about the beginning of Christmas? Yeah. Baby Jesus was born. Very good. All right. Do you have baby Jesus? Okay. Who can tell me something else about the story about baby Jesus? Yeah. He was born in like this barn. Barn. Okay. Great. Thank you. We have children. Okay, good. Say that again. Okay, so we have him, and he wasn't just lying on the ground in a barn, he was in a manger. Okay. All right, where was the manger? Anybody remember where the barn was located? Yes. Bethlehem. Very good. All right, thank you. Okay, so we're in Bethlehem. We're in a barn. We have the manger. We have baby Jesus. Who else is there? Animals were there. Okay, what kind of animals were in the barn? There was a donkey, that's right. And there may have been other animals, but these are the ones we have. Okay. The sheep were not there originally. How did the sheep get there? They came with the shepherds, right? So did we have a shepherd? All right, good. So, how did the shepherds get there? Anybody remember how we got the shepherds? Yeah. There was a fairy that came down from God and told the shepherds that baby Jesus was born. That's very cool. Actually, we tend to call them angels. The shepherds were out watching their sheep, so they came to see baby Jesus. Yeah. Oh, okay. We have some other people that came to visit, right? Where were the three wise men from? Anybody remember? They were from the east. They came from far away. And how did they get there? What's the legend about how they came? Maybe they rode on like horses. They rode on, some say horses. What's another? Yeah? Camel. Camel. I think ours is riding on a camel. Right? There you go. Okay, so we have the wise men who came to visit baby Jesus, shepherds came to visit baby Jesus. Who are we missing in this story? His parents. Okay, his parents. Who remembers their name? What do you think? Pardon? You don't raise your hand. Oh, okay. Joseph. Okay. We have his father was Joseph, and who else? His mom was Mary. His mom was Mary. So we have Mary. That's right. And does anyone remember why Joseph and Mary were in Bethlehem? Was that their home where they lived? Okay, all right. Actually, Bethlehem was not where Joseph and Mary lived. They had to go there so that they could pay their taxes. So they were away from their own home. And that's how they ended up in the barn. Right, well, why were they in the barn? Does anyone remember? Yes. Nobody let them stay. Well, that's true. Was there a reason why no one let them stay? Yeah, because they were poor. They were poor, that is true, yes. So they didn't have a lot of money. Okay, y'all can play. Why were they? There was no room in the end. There were all these people who were traveling to pay their taxes. Everybody else got that room. But the innkeeper let them stay in the barn. So do we have everybody? Okay. All right. So that's kind of a neat story. Huh? I like it. I think it's a story that we all need to know. So thank
Every birth is a miracle, and each night a child is born is a holy night. Birth is beautiful in retrospect, but the process is not pretty. Who speaks of the hours of pain and fear between midnight and morning, when Mary labored in the dark to bring forth her firstborn son? My spirit knows how much of the time I am alone in the dark, alone in fear and pain, laboring to become the person I am meant to be. The celebration of Christmas needs to acknowledge our pain and fear, our darkness and doubt. For these are the preconditions of all miracles. We are called upon constantly to let go of an imperfect past, to welcome and embrace an unknown future, to bring novelty into the world, to create new possibilities. None of this is done without labor and uncertainty and pain. None of it is done with a foreknowledge of happy endings. The best we have is hope. The hope we share with one another, the promise based upon our own past experience, based upon the truth of the ancient stories, the hope and the promise that it is worth it, that it is through our faithful labor and our willingly accepted pain that miracles occur, that the holy is born, that new possibilities come into the world. And so my soul takes strength from this promise. And remember the baby born in a stable who grew to speak the truth of holy wisdom and to become the hope of millions. Have faith that all the struggle, in spite of doubt and fear, in spite of the dark and the pain, leads to rest and peace, to new life and a glorious morning. Let us now still the outer world and touch within ourselves the deep and holy center of our being. In the cradle of our hearts, let us find and worship the newborn, unexpected wonder that is the hope of the world.
Holy night, the stars are brightly shining. It is the night of the dear Savior's birth. Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appeared and the soul
May our sharing in these stories of the season remind us that each night a child is born is a holy night, and that within each of us there is a unique child of God for whom the whole world waits. The beloved liberal religious educator Sophia Faz once wrote these words about the meaning of the Christmas story. I invite you to read them responsibly. You all are left, you all are right. Please join me. For so the children come.
Always in the same way they come.
Born of human seed and womb. No angels herald their beginnings.
No prophets predict their future courses. No wise men see a star to show where to find the babe that may grow to save humankind.
Yet each night a child is born is a holy night.
Fathers and mothers, parents sitting beside their children's graves, feel glory in the sight of a new life beginning. They ask themselves, where and how will this new life end? Will it ever end? They ask themselves, where and how will this new life end? Will it ever end?
Each night a child is born is a holy night. A time for singing, for worshiping, for wondering. Each night a child is born is a holy night.
Spirit of love, whose celebration Christmas is. The time of gladness is now at hand. The time of giving and sharing, the gathering together with those who are dear to us, the feasting, the remembering, the laughter. Yet we would pause in this moment of quiet anticipation to find the deeper meaning of this season, to offer our gratitude for all that is given to us, life and beauty and love, and for the power we have to give, and so to brighten the lives of others, to understand the wisdom and meaning of the ancient stories of promise, to gather the whole fragile world and all its broken children into our hearts and feel our love for them, to touch the deep passion and glory and the shining hope that our lives are meant to have. Let us offer now, in the silent language of our hearts, our private praise for all that Christmas means to us. And as we begin our candle lighting, together with the carol Silent Night, let me invite you to listen patiently. The instruments will play a verse, then Sarah will sing a verse by herself, and then we will all join in with the words on the screen and conclude by humming a final verse together. Remember always to keep the lighted candle upright and let the unlit wick tilt into the flame. Let us light all our candles this Christmas.
Candles of joy despite all sadness.
Candles of hope where even despair keeps watch.
Candles of courage even when fears are ever present.
Candles of peace in the midst of tempest-tossed days.
Candles of grace to ease heavy burdens.
Candles of love to inspire all our living.
Candles that will burn all the year long.
For when the song of the angels is stilled,
When the star in the sky is gone.
when the kings and princes are back home,
When the shepherds are back with their flock.
then the work of Christmas begins.
To find the lost and to heal the broken.
To feed the hungry and to release the prisoner.
To rebuild the nations and to bring peace among foes.
To make music in the heart.
To carry light into the world.
So let us believe in the eternal message of Christmas and carry its flame in our hearts always, that we may proclaim peace on earth and goodwill to all people. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and blessings to us all, everyone.